Hello again, and welcome to another session looking at Patronum features, part of our how-to series. These are small bite-sized sessions where we just look at a few features rather than looking at the entire platform. The idea being that you can refer back to these videos at a later date if you need to just dip in and refresh your understanding. This time, rather than just looking at one feature, I'm going to look at maybe three features because they're all pretty small and it would only be a 2-minute video if we looked at each of them separately. So we're going to be covering groups, calendars, and spaces. Okay, so let's dive right in. You can see I'm already here on the group management page. So using the menu items on the left-hand side, I've jumped into groups. And what we see here immediately is a list of the groups that we have in our environment. Now, these are all weirdly named because this is just our test and demo environment, so don't worry about the nonsense that you're seeing there. I can filter this list like you should be familiar with now in some of the other videos I've done using the filter option here. If I know the name of the group or the email address that group has been given, those kind of things, I can filter from that using those to narrow the list down. Orphan groups would be groups where there are no owners, no managers of that group. So basically nobody to look after the group. So you could filter on that and find out if there are any of those in your environment. I can look at any groups that have any external members in it. Now, of course, from a security and compliance point of view, that's important to know. If you've got groups that people are using as mail distribution groups, let's say, it's really important to know that you've got external members who are receiving those emails. And if I'm looking for groups owned by a particular person, then that's obviously a filter option as well. If I want to create any new groups, I use the floating action button, which you should be familiar with. So I click on that, type in the name of the group, give it an email address as well, any description that I want. And just like you would in the Google Admin Console itself, I get to choose the access level that I want to create this group at. And that changes the permissions of the group and determines who's able to maybe access the group, who's able to see the members of the group, and all those kind of things. Okay. And if I want to make it a dynamic group to include all of the users in my organization, I've got the option to do that down here. I'm not going to create a new group. Hopefully everybody understands what that's all about. When it comes to the groups themselves, if I click on any of the names of the group here, I'll get a pop-up showing me the members list of that group, and I can use the floating action button again to add members and decide what level of access they should have, whether it's member, manager, or owner, and choose the email address up here. And I've also got a tab to manage the settings of the group. So if at a later date I decide I need to change the permission level of that group, I can do so here. And I can also define additional aliases. So if I want other email addresses to route via this group as well as its original email address, then I can do so there. And I can also apply labels to the group in these settings. Using the little pencil icon at the top, I can edit the details of the group, such as the name and the email address. Now, clearly, somebody's gone a bit crazy here and copied a group and copied a group and copied a group. So I might decide at some point I'm going to tidy all of that up using that option. And then, of course, I can remove the group from there, and I can decide whether or not this group and its email address are visible in the directory. And that's pretty much it. So very quick topic. Groups are pretty straightforward. As are spaces, very, very similar. So I'm going to jump straight down. I'm going to skip over calendars. We'll come back to that afterwards. I'm going to jump into spaces. Oh, hello. We've got an error. This is our demo platform, so we will hit bugs from time to time. But hopefully, as you saw, quick refresh, and we're back in business. So that's perhaps a timely demonstration of how the cloud platform is pretty resilient. Okay, so we're in our space management view now, and it looks very, very similar to the groups one, doesn't it? I've got a similar kind of filtering view here. This time, I've got to know what the name of the space the chat space that I'm looking for is, and then I can filter the view that way. I've got the floating action button to create a new chat space, give it a description if I want to, and define or select who the manager is going to be from the email address from there. If I click on any one of the spaces, I'll get the details popping up of who the members are, and I can add more members using the floating action button, and I can change the member level here or remove members using the dustbin. And that's, again, about it. So Chat Spaces, I was going to say it's a fairly new product. It's been around for a good couple of years from Google now, but it's one of their younger products in the Google Workspace set. So there's not a huge amount that you can do with it at the moment. But that's it, easily managed through Patronum here. Okay, so what I will do is I'll spend a little bit more time looking at calendars, because there's more to calendars. There's individual calendars owned by the users that you have in your environment, and then there's also the resource calendars for the meeting rooms and maybe the equipment and things like that you are lending out. So when we come into the calendars view here, we are landing straight away into that resources view. So this lists out the resources that we've defined through Google. Now, a resource is typically a meeting room, but it can also be used for equipment. Even things like pool cars are often listed as a resource in the Google Calendar, so that you can book it out and book it back in again when you're finished with it. So this is showing me a list of the resources that we've got defined, and these would be meeting rooms. You can see which floor has been designated for it, which building it's allocated in, and so on. So if you're a largish organization with multiple locations, you would define your building identifier, which floor, and then identify the meeting room within that floor space. If I click on one of these resources, I'll get a pop-up showing me what calendar events have been booked into that resource. This is quite useful just to get a view of which room has got availability, what's been booked in there. If somebody needs you to free up a room, say they booked it and they no longer need it, as an administrator, you could pop in here, find the event that they're talking about, and just delete that event, and that would free up that meeting space again. I can filter this view, as you should be familiar with now with all our things. If I know the name of that resource or the building ID that it's been allocated to, I can filter the view using those two options there. Okay. And if I want to change the name of these rooms, for example, here we've got meeting rooms that are all called meeting, not particularly intuitive. So Google has a naming convention that they recommend for meeting rooms. You don't have to stick to it, but it's quite useful. So I could here rename this resource if I wanted to. I'll get a pop-up here showing me all of the details in that resource, including the floor it's assigned to. If I've allocated a section, the northeast corridor or whatever it might be, those kind of things in here. I can edit all of that. And this is the same information that you'll see in the Google Admin Console if you're managing resources there. So this just gives you a nice way of doing it via Patronum. Okay, so those are the resources. The next tab along calendars, these are going to be looking at individual calendars. Now, we don't show you a list straight away, and that's simply because the amount of resources it would take to go and pull through the APIs the entire list is prohibitive. It would be a very slow screen refresh here. So what you need to do initially is go to a filter and pop in what it is you're looking for. So in calendar name, I would say, look, I'm looking for, let's say, Dean. Look for his calendar. Or anybody else called Dean. There might be more users called Dean. But here we go. Here's Dean's calendar. And now I can click in here. And I can now change the permissions for Dean's calendar and start sharing it out to other people. So if I needed to grant delegated access to Dean's calendar for somebody else, then I would do that through this view. We're not looking at the events here, just managing the access. Oh, there we go. So anyone in my organization can find and access the calendar. That's because we've got this kind of open calendars policy. But if I wanted to add somebody else in here and give them a specific level of access, maybe allow them to make changes to that event. If I needed to give Dean somebody to manage his calendar for him, I could grant it that way. Okay. So that's looking at the calendars themselves. To look at the events, I would click on the Events tab. And again, we don't show you a big list initially because, well, there will be a huge number of events in calendars across the entire organization. So what we want you to do is use the filter here and select by event name if you've got it, whether it's, I don't know, team meeting might be the event name or something like that. And if you happen to know the ID, that's usually a long, complicated string of characters, then fine. Orphaned events will be ones where maybe a calendar event was created and then maybe it's a recurring event and then the owner of that event has left the organization and been removed, but the calendar event is still there. It was never tidied up in the offboarding process. So you could find orphaned events through that route. Or I could search for events by attendee name. So let's see if there's anything with people called Stuart in. Yes, here we go. So, oh look, somebody's birthday event that I've been invited to. So you can find events that way, and you can click on here to see the detail of the event, all of the the start times and all that kind of stuff that you would normally see. And I could manipulate anything like that and change it in here if I needed to. Or back in the list view, I've got the ability to just wipe that event out. If somebody's erroneously created an event and they need your help and as an administrator to tidy it up, you can do so here. And then lastly, in this view is our Insights tab. And this really gives us a view into those resources that we saw right at the start. And this is going to show us how many hours are booked into our meeting rooms. And this allows us to then figure out which rooms are most and least utilized and make some educated decisions about how to reorganize our meeting spaces if we wanted to do such a thing. So you see, we're not really using, this is demo environment, so we're not really using meeting rooms. So I don't see much in the way of information in here. So, but there we go. That's what that view is for. So I said this would be quite a brief one, and if we'd have only looked at one or other of these areas, it would have been even briefer. But hopefully you found it useful looking at groups, spaces, and calendars. If you have any questions that you want to pose to us, please use the chat, and we will do our best to respond. Otherwise, thanks for listening, and see you next time.